Here we go. Mic check for Craig. 1, 2, 1, 2. 1, 2. Thanks for that. Test 1, 2. Test 1, 2. Test 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4, 3, 2, 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you on the third of several days running of press conferences talking about the relaxations of the limited orders that we had on some businesses. And I want to start today by saying tomorrow you're going to see a resumption of activities in many places. It is important for Wyoming residents to remember this is your responsibility. This is your time to shine, to make sure that the ground we gained in this battle is not lost. And despite some people saying, that we can close it back down, let's not do that. That will be far more disruptive than if we just do the right thing in a steady fashion. I've often said, let's do the right thing, do it right away, and do it the right way. And we are working very hard to make sure we do it the right way. Today, I'm joined by Director Brian Nesvik of the Wyoming Game and Fish Department, and Darren Westby, Director of the Wyoming State Parks and Cultural Resources. I will also note that Dr. Harris is here if there are questions that come up. Today, our total case numbers include 415 lab-confirmed and 144 probable cases. There are an estimated 13 COVID-19 patients hospitalized at this time, and there are 7 fatalities. I will also note that the overwhelming preponderance of people that are infected with this disease in Wyoming are white. Tomorrow, the modified public health order takes effect, and some additional businesses will begin to operate once again. I want to thank the small business owners for their willingness to adapt to this new environment, and for those Wyoming people who have been very sensitive about those small businesses. And as I've said, they've made sure that they've ordered out for the curbside from restaurants that are dealing with difficult times, that have gotten virtual haircuts and virtual nail treatments. We continue to refine our guidelines, and we are working to address all the questions that about these operations that arise. Yesterday, you heard from Josh Durrell and the webinars that he is continuing to host. This is an anxious time. It's a fun time. It's an exceptionally important time. And it is a time when we want, above all else, make sure that we continue to act safely. And just a quick note on that. Earlier today, I was talking with a coal mine, and they have been working very hard through these circumstances with very trying situations. MSHA, which is a regulatory agency, holds those coal mines responsible for any COVID-related disease they might get, which means that if we're careless and a coal miner is infected with COVID, that mine, regardless of whether the coal miner did it carelessly or got it inadvertently, that mine, already struggling under terrible circumstances, is further held accountable for those. So this is not just about you. It is about our commerce. It is about keeping our people working in Wyoming. Let me say that the new orders do allow county-level flexibility, and we have been actively engaged with counties and local officials, if you can imagine. I continue to encourage the county health officers to consider local conditions when working with our state health officer on potentially county-wide variances and, of course, the specific exemptions that we outlined yesterday. As a reminder, social distancing will continue to be a part of our lives for some time. But I do believe that with social distancing, many of our businesses can return and actually have a pretty good year. The reason our case numbers are where they are today is because the Wyoming public was willing to do the right thing and limit contact and avoid gathering in large groups. It's been a long time, I know, but you've demonstrated your willingness to work carefully and thoughtfully through this process, which is why I'm so proud to report to President Trump that Wyoming is ready to lead this nation back to full economy. The public's continued cooperation will help ensure that we stay on the right path. As I announced yesterday, the directive requiring any individual coming into Wyoming and self-quarantining for 14 days is planned to expire on May 8th. We are planning to open our state park campgrounds, and I am going to let Director Westby talk to you about those programs. Director Westby, thank you.
Thank you, Governor, Dr. Harris, and your staff for the great leadership and all the work that your teams have done to get us through this extraordinary event. As the Governor said, I'm Darren Westby. I'm the Director of Wyoming State Parks and Cultural Resources, and I represent an amazing crew that have worked tirelessly throughout this time frame to ensure that our operations are open to the public, and not only just at the parks, but also with the rest of our most amazing products that are that this state has to offer, including maintaining the history of the state as well as documenting this one that we're going through right now, which is a significant point in history, and helping the arts and cultural world, which continue to be a significant impact on our citizenry's psychological well-being, as well as as we strategically work our way out of this pandemic. I know right now our Arts Council and our Humanities Council are working tirelessly to get ready to launch some of the grants that they've been receiving out of the CARES program to make sure that those funds get into the hands of our constituency. As the Governor indicated in previous releases and conferences, for the health of our citizenry, Wyoming State Parks have remained open to the public for recreation, day-use recreation. But to decrease the potential spread of this infection, we restricted camping. Fortunately, and again, through the efforts of the hardworking crew at State Parks, we are excited to announce that we have put together a plan to get Wyoming residents camping in just over 2 weeks, beginning May 15th. Now, I wish I could flip the switch and we could get camping open this weekend. However, due to this pandemic that we're going through, due to the budget crisis that we're going through, what we did not want to do is go out and hire a bunch of seasonals and then not be able to open up our system and then have to lay those individuals off. And so we made the choice of holding off until just probably earlier this last week when we figured the plan was going to start getting released. And so we're now in the process of hiring those seasonal employees, getting the parks back up to the level that we, from a brand management perspective, really want to be. And again, starting with our normal business busy weekend is Memorial Day weekend, but we're getting started a couple weeks early because of the outpouring support and desire of getting out and getting into the recreation world. Currently, up until this point, we've been focusing all of our existing staff on just maintaining what we did have open. I think the Governor talked about it yesterday about how we've had June numbers at, let's say, Kurt Gowdy in February. That's amazing. Obviously, there's a need for people to want to get outside and recreate, and we're happy and fortunate to be able to do it. With this plan, we are significantly ramping up over the next couple of weeks again to hire those seasonals to help the existing staff to get the parks ready. We will continue to monitor our surrounding states to ensure that when they start opening up their campgrounds that we will have another plan that we will work through the Governor's office and the state health officer to ensure that we are strategic in our data-driven plan to go forward to ensure the safety of our visitors and staff. We don't want to happen what happened earlier. We were the only campgrounds that were open in the region, and as the Governor said, we were getting inundated with out-of-state residents, out-of-state visitors coming to our campgrounds to take respite in our amazing products. But what they were also doing is potentially infecting our citizenry. And so we had that strategic plan to reduce that potential risk. Continuing with the safety of our visitors and staff, the plan that was approved the plan was approved because we put into place the demonstrated abilities to ensure that we could follow the socially distanced guidelines with our individual campground layouts. Therefore, all camping will require reservations and due to spacings, not all existing campsites will be available. If the current campground layout does not allow for safe distancing between campsites, they will be taken off the inventory for the reservation and will be used as a buffer between sites. We will use this reservation system to also ensure that only in-state residents can make that reservation. We will provide instant communication back through the information received on the reservation to ensure that if there is an immediate concern or an immediate issue that we need to address, we have that instant contact with that reservationist. And also, from a staff perspective, it is reducing our risk of our staff by the amount of cash that they have to handle. And I'd say from the convenience standpoint, like a hotel room, when you leave your house loaded up with your trailer to go camping at one of our parks, you know that you have a campsite when you get to the park. You know where you're going to be camping. So the convenience of the reservation system should be a bonus for sure. Unfortunately, sites will not be available on a first-come, first-served basis. However, visitors still can secure a spot without that prior reservation by pulling up to a site. If it's open, there'll be a sign with a number on it. You can call that number or website. You can see if it's available, and if it's available, you reserve it. Again, let's go back to those points of why the reservation's important. It allows us to ensure that we have the ability to make sure it's an in-state resident. We know that they are going to be camping in a specific spot that is going to be safe on a socially distanced perspective. Again, for safety, our fee booths will remain closed. All fee compliance and reservations will be verified by law enforcement. We are also working with an online process to purchase day use permits on a daily basis as opposed to using cash at the Iron Ranger or the fee canister. There will be, the plan also allows for single unit campsites. Therefore, no group campsites or group shelters will be open for reservation or use. Again, state parks, per existing state park rules, and kind of following the exact same guidelines that have already been announced, no more than 10 persons per site will be allowed. We are opening up our cabins and yurts for rental as well. However, we are only going to allow them from a Friday to Sunday rental. That gives us another 4 days for staff to get in there and clean and disinfect for the next reservation. And we are going to continue to follow the guidelines from the governor and the state health officer, CDC, recommendations that all playgrounds and, again, the group shelters, group campsites, and some indoor facilities will remain closed to the public. And we ask that you continue all social distancing recommendations while recreating at boat docks, boat ramps, fish cleaning stations, and other areas where people may congregate. Please know that this plan is subject to modification at any time due to the evolving nature. If we find that the plan and guidelines we put in place are not being adhered to, we will be forced to modify and possibly restrict camping and possibly other recreation opportunities as well. As the governor indicated before, let's hope we don't have to go that route. We're entrusting you as citizenry to ensure that you're going to do your part, and we really appreciate you doing that. So we implore all users recreate responsibly, follow these guidelines so we can continue to remain open and enjoy this summer's services. We don't want what happened in some of our other states where visitors failed to do this and they ended up having to force those closures, and that's not a good thing for our state. Again, thank you, Governor. Thank you to your staff, Dr. Harris and your staff, as well as all my hardworking crew at Wyoming State Parks and Cultural Resources that have worked together to ensure that this plan got approved, as well as all the other staff that have worked tirelessly to ensure the very most important cultural sector of our state and community livability and sustainability will be strong when we come out of this pandemic. Again, a few more operational changes and rules than what you're probably normal to, but we are very excited to host our Wyomingites at our campsites at Wyoming State Parks. Our next phase will be starting to work with the team that was just mentioned to ensure that we can get our plans put together to start seeing our Wyoming State Historic Sites opened up as well. So again, thank you for your time. Thank you, the state of Wyoming.
Thanks, Darren, to you and your crew. I know you have been working tirelessly getting these plans organized, putting new systems in place, making sure that Wyoming residents have access to exactly what they need. And this new system, I think, will be helpful. I can say from conversations I had yesterday with Commissioner in Platte County how much they appreciate the work you're doing to make sure that visitors can come in, know that they're safe, know that they have the recreation opportunities that they do, and they look forward, actually, to making sure that when that season opens up more fully, which we hope will happen as we see the progress that can be made and we gradually relax more and more of these very limited restrictions, that we start to see a lot more people come knowing that Wyoming is the place to go. I have to say it's a great tribute to your staff, and as you say, both the cultural and the recreational staff. So thank you and your team. I also asked Director Nesvik of the Wyoming Game and Fish to be here because people in Wyoming love to hunt and fish, and so Director Nesvik, would you talk a little bit about that too? Thanks.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you, Governor. Certainly, Game and Fish doesn't take lightly the serious nature by which the residents and citizens of Wyoming take their wildlife resources. And so, I wanted to start today by saying that, Team Game and Fish has been on the job. We've continued to provide those services that are important to our citizens in accordance with the guidelines and the directives that our great leader in Governor Gordon and our health professionals and Dr. Harris have provided for our state. We've also, during this time, as wildlife-related issues have come up, we've worked closely with our governor and our commission, obviously, but then also community leaders from all over our state to try to balance the access between the outdoor opportunities that we have in Wyoming and also the health and safety of our residents. And so, we're going to continue to focus on those important tenets. So today, I'm going to talk just a little bit about non-resident fishing licenses, the antler season that's going to open tomorrow, and then some important reminders for this spring. So a couple of weeks ago, the Game and Fish was granted emergency authority to suspend non-resident fishing licenses, daily licenses and 5-day licenses, and this suspension will continue through May 8th, as the governor's indicated. That's the current directive for self-quarantine for people entering the state for non-work related purposes will extend till May 8th, and so that the suspension of those license sales will also. This directive is intended to protect the health of our citizens, and it's not intended to in any way discourage the great support that we receive from folks from outside of our state to our tourism industry and to our outfitting industry and to having other people be able to experience Wyoming's great outdoor resources. It is intended, though, to make sure that we support those important directives that have been put in place to protect the health of our citizens. We will, as soon as the directive for non-residents entering the state is lifted, potentially expiring May 8th, as the governor's indicated, we do intend to resume immediately the sale of those licenses. Again, one of the things, and it was similar to what Director Westby discussed, when this was initially discussed and when we put this restriction in place, all of our indications were from license sales data as well as our field personnel were that anglers were coming into the state and were not following the governor's directive. And so the intention there was to support that directive. We did at the same time allow to strike a balance. We continued to sell other license types, and we did continue to consider, we did continue to sell non-resident annual licenses for those folks that may live in Wyoming but not necessarily meet the qualification to be a resident for game and fish purposes. This change has made a difference, and I do want to thank those folks from our state that have been recreating all over the state since we've had spring finally come to Wyoming. I do want to thank those folks for following all those directives and social distancing and being responsible while folks are hunting, fishing, and boating. As I indicated, tomorrow the antler collection season will open on the western part of the state. There's certainly been some concern from folks, particularly in 3 counties in northwest Wyoming, concerned about potentially having folks come in from out of the state to antler hunt. We've discussed that with community leaders, and I think that with the extension of the governor's directive on non-residents entering the state and other requests of folks to socially distance and practice good health directives, as have been indicated by Dr. Harris and others, I think that we should, that safety is at the forefront of everybody's mind, and I think this antler hunting season tomorrow will be, it's going to be something that folks will be surprised by how well I think that this can happen without jeopardizing folks' health. It is a great opportunity to get outdoors, but I hope that those that shed hunt that live outside of Wyoming will wait till later in the spring or maybe next year to come to be respectful of the directives that the governor has put in place. The other thing I wanted to mention is I mentioned that we've continued to be on the job. We continue to do what we need to do to collect important wildlife information and protect our wildlife resources. And also, as boating season starts, we are working hard to make sure that we continue our efforts to keep aquatic invasive species, mainly zebra and quagga mussels, from entering our state. We continue to be free of those particular invasives, and we would like to keep it that way. And COVID hasn't changed that. COVID-19 has not changed our focus and our intense efforts to make sure that we do everything we can to not allow those 2 invasive species to come in our state. I ask folks, please, if you go by one of our check stations, that you stop, and certainly those that are bringing boats into the state from out of state after the governor's directive is lifted, I ask that you make sure you get your boat inspected before you launch. That's the Wyoming law. Lastly, and very importantly, as I indicated, we've continued to collect all the right information to be able to set seasons for next year. Our commission met last week, and they did set those seasons. We're continuing to conduct the license draw. We're receiving applications now, and we're putting everything into motion that we need to make sure we have a fall hunting season. And like I said, we're ready to conduct the draw. We know in Wyoming that the draw is a very, very important part of spring. And so with that, Governor, thank you for the opportunity, and I'll be glad to answer any questions.
And thank you, Director Nesvik, and very much want to thank your team for working through this and advising on so many aspects of this. And I think one of the other things that I really want to express my appreciation for is the outfitters, particularly fishing outfitters, that have been inconvenienced by this. I acknowledge that. I know that. That's one of the reasons why we are hustling to get back in operation, and just want to thank you for the important role you play in making sure visitors to Wyoming have a terrific opportunity and get to see what a phenomenal state we have. And I've been hearing from dude ranches around the state, what does that mean? And I hope this puts to rest some of their concerns about what their fishing this summer is going to look like. Wyoming is a great place to fish, and I have to say, one of the fun things about that, in a conversation I had with Governor Bullock this morning, we were comparing our fishing streams, and I got to brag a little bit about that. So thank you, Director Nesvik. Before we go to questions, I just want to provide some information on other recreation areas and public lands in the West, just for your information. Throughout Forest Service Region 2, which includes most of Wyoming, Colorado, South Dakota, and Nebraska, campgrounds and developed recreation sites remain closed. All trails, trailheads, and parking facilities will remain open. At this time, no date has been set for reopening of Grand Teton and Yellowstone National Parks, but I can assure you that Governor Little, Governor Bullock, and I have been in near constant conversation about opening that up as quickly as we possibly can. That was part of the reason for my conversation this morning with Governor Bullock. And this, I guess, Devil's Tower National Monument is also closed. I'm not exactly sure why. I did not request that monument to be closed. These destinations are, of course, critical parts of our tourism economy in the northwest and northeast corners of our state. And tourism is indeed one of our most precious and important the largest employer in Wyoming, but most important industries. It's taking a hit. It will take a hit. And we want to make sure that people come to Wyoming knowing that we are responsible, that we're doing the right thing, that you can have a wonderful time, that our mountains are second to none, our streams are second to none, our lakes and our boating opportunities are unparalleled, and our shed hunting opportunities cannot be beat. While many decisions on facility operations have yet to be made, when Yellowstone and Grand Teton parks do reopen, we know that lodging availability within the parks will be greatly reduced. In Yellowstone locations like Old Faithful Inn, Lake Hotel, they will not open this summer. And in Grand Teton, Jenny Lake Lodge and Jackson Lake Lodge are not expected to open this year. That does mean that the visitors who do come to Yellowstone to see what a great place it is, first national park in our country, a remarkable place. If you've ever had an opportunity, will have an unparalleled opportunity to enjoy that park. And it means that they will be staying in our gateway communities, places like Cody. And I've been working very closely with Park County to make sure that we're open and ready to do business there. It was also fun in talking with Governor Bullock this morning that he's telling me that he's getting ready to open his businesses. He's getting ready to, we all know that he's talked about opening casinos and restaurants, but he's saying we're opening our retail, which for those of you who live in Wyoming, retail hasn't been closed. I think we must remember that summer tourism season, in terms of revenues, will not look similar to previous years. That's a big concern. And if we get off half-baked and start up and, suddenly some outbreak happens, this is going to be a huge challenge. And frankly, as I keep talking about the ground we've gained, there are 8 governors in this country who said our people are responsible and thoughtful, and when you ask them to do the right thing, they will do the right thing. You don't need to tell them to do that. And all 8 of us have expressed our pride in our populations, and I'd hate to be put in an embarrassing situation with colleagues who said some time ago that we needed to issue a shelter in place. As you remember, I didn't think that was necessary. So with that, I want to open this up for some questions. Again, you've got Director Westby, Director Nesvik, and Dr. Harris with us here today. I'm happy to take some questions. And from the Sheridan Press, my friend Kristen Saban has, and Olivia Kenna of Sweetwater News Now have the same question. And that question is, the American Legion Baseball Commissioner will not allow practices to be held for teams to schedule games until Governor Gordon gives his go-ahead. Do you have any idea if or when American Legion Baseball will be able to begin their season? Could the governor or maybe Dr. Harris, probably Dr. Harris, can speak to that, address the possibility of youth and adult sports being allowed this summer? FYI, The news record had a story, so thank you very much for that, and I'll turn this over to Dr. Harris. I will say, on her way up here, it's been fun to see golfers out on the golf course.
Thank you, Governor. And yes, I totally agree that sports and recreation are incredibly important and incredibly important for health too. Sports such as baseball and other types of sports fall into that gathering category that is addressed by statewide Order 2. As I've spoken about before, I have concerns about large gatherings of people coming together within close contact just because of the number of people that could be impacted if there was virus present in that gathering. But like with any other decisions that we'll be making, we'll be looking very closely at what the data tell us and whether the data tell us, closer to that time period if such gatherings could be possible without having harms to the public health. So like all of our other approaches, we're trying to be thoughtful and measured, data-driven, and make sure that we're making the right decision based on the data we have at the time.
So thanks. Are there questions from the phones? We can hear.
Yes. Yeah. This is Greg Johnson at the News Record in Gillette. I was curious on the camping rule in the release that you put out earlier today. It said that it would be enforced by law enforcement. Can you elaborate more on how you plan to enforce that? Pretty good. I was curious on the camping rule in the release that you put out earlier today. It said that it would be enforced by law enforcement. Can you elaborate more on how you plan to enforce that? Pretty good. I'm curious on the
I'm going to have to stop. I haven't heard 2/3 of the question. I think, and unfortunately, I don't know if there was a really long question. I think the question that I got was the enforcement of our rules of 10 people per campsite is what I got, and that we're not going to have a fee booth attendant this year, or at least in the short time, and we're going to enforce it with law enforcement. We do have law enforcement rangers that are patrolling all state parks, and they will be checking for reservations and license plates and ensuring that the fees have been paid. So very similar to like every other year with compliance checks through law enforcement, they're ensuring that fees have been paid and that you're in the right spot. And so we will also have camp posts out in our system as well. And those individuals aren't necessarily from Wyoming, so I guess it's something I need to let everybody know that they will come in, they will quarantine for 14 days, and then after that 14 days, we will get them to work being a good volunteer out in our state park system. They too will be enforcing ensuring that all fees have been paid and that you're in the right spot on the reservation system.
So if you could speak slowly, we're still sort of struggling a little bit with our technology. And the last question was we got the law enforcement piece, but it was really hard to hear the rest of it. So if you could speak slowly.
Hey, Governor Gordon, this is Will Thomas with Wyoming News Now.
Yes.
I have a question for Director Westby about campgrounds. Are bathrooms and showers going to be open?
The question is, are the bathrooms and showers going to be open? At this point, the bathrooms will be open. the bathrooms will be open, but there will not be, we'll have the shower houses closed at this point until we have some more direction on whether or not the showers can remain open or stay open. I guess we would follow along the similar lines as the orders that came out regarding the gyms and the spas, and I believe the locker rooms are not open at this point, and that would kind of follow along that same line. The shower houses would follow along the same line as the locker. So.
Thanks very much. And, you know, these are, again, extraordinary times. Just referencing the special circumstances in my conversation with a coal company today. They were expressing the need for them to wipe their all their control surfaces on their haul trucks, et cetera, down 4 times daily, and the cost of that. So I think we're trying to learn as we go exactly what kind of sanitation we need. Next question.
Hey, Governor. Jim O'Reilly, Bigfoot 99 Radio. There's been some talk about a second round of PPP funding or small business loans to businesses. How will the partial reopening of businesses, some businesses in the state, affect those businesses and other businesses to apply for those loans, or if it affects it at all, after they're allowed to partially reopen, and yet business still won't be the same or what it was prior to the public health orders? Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. The question was, you know, if we do a partial reopening and they come with another round of Paycheck Protection Plan funding, small business loan administration kinds of funding, how will this affect the businesses that are partially opened? Even though being partially opened, they're still going to be revenue down, and will this affect their ability to get those funds? And what I'd say, Jim, don't know exactly what Congress has. There's quite a bit of argument in the process about where those funds are going to go. There's a little bit of discussion between will they go to help small businesses, will they go to help government, who really will control this process, and what are the restrictions on it. I haven't really seen that. We have had conversations with Treasury. Really want to thank our delegation for taking the initiative and making sure that we got conversations with people that could be very helpful for the existing CARES Act and some of the issues that are associated with that, just clarifying how those processes work. Jim, what I'm going to tell you is that we are working very hard. One of the reasons I'm looking at pulling the legislature back in is to build really targeted programs to make sure that those industries, maybe you're familiar with this, but some industries were completely excluded from the PPP program. Small proprietors, single proprietors, some of our oil and gas companies, oil field workers, were exempted from some of those funds, and yet they're such an important part of Wyoming's economy. And part of what we're working to do is to make sure our economy stays whole during this time when we have, Wyoming oil is selling at $0 and has been negative a couple of times. Nobody's going to produce under those kinds of circumstances. We want to make sure that our industry folks stay here, that our skilled employees stay here, so that when the businesses come back, that we have a skilled, available workforce ready to go. So we're looking across all spectrums to see if we can help those industries any way we possibly can. Thank you. Next question. Is there another question? If there is no question.
Hey, Governor Gordon. Will Thomas again with Wyoming News Now. Sorry about that.
Yep, no worries.
Hey, I have a question for Dr. Harris. If she could, there's been some critiques over count of confirmed and probable cases. Can she kind of explain the importance of including the probable cases and what exactly a probable case is for people out there who might not know?
Sure, thank you. So I believe the question was, could I explain what probable cases are and why it's important to include them in the count? Probable cases are cases that individuals who have had known close contact with someone with laboratory confirmed COVID-19, so somebody who has been within 6 feet of someone with laboratory confirmed COVID-19 for at least 10 minutes while they were symptomatic or in the 48 hours before they became symptomatic. And if this contact goes on to develop illness that is consistent with COVID-19, so fever, respiratory symptoms, etc., but they don't get tested for whatever reason, that is a probable case. These probable case definitions are something that we use in epidemiology quite a bit. They are defined by the Council of State and Territorial Epidemiologists, which are the state epidemiologists across the country that write the case definitions and send them to the Center for Disease Control for use for national surveillance. We think they're important to include, knowing that especially at the beginning of the outbreak, and there's still now some limitations in testing supplies and testing availability, and that people who have compatible symptoms and known close contact with a COVID case are very likely to have COVID, and so it gives a more accurate count of our cases than just including the laboratory confirmed cases alone.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. With that, let me just once again say how much I appreciate the people of Wyoming. I do note that we passed a very grim, I guess, benchmark the other day. We're now within 3,000 or 4,000 cases of the largest number of flu deaths that we've ever had. And so, I urge caution. I urge you to be as thoughtful as you can to make sure that Wyoming proceeds in a methodical and direct way. We are working as hard as we can to make sure that we lift these in a way that doesn't require, okay, we're started, now we got to go close it up. I know there are people out there saying, well, if we have a problem, we can just close it up. Those people don't run businesses. They don't know how hard it is to start up and then have to close it down. We are absolutely committed to getting our economy back and running, making sure our employees have good jobs, making sure that the restaurants and other things that have been closed down temporarily, even though they had curbside, can continue to operate. Every step that we make, when we see progress, when we see it going forward, that's the point of the dashboard that we had demonstrated the last couple days. Every step of that way that we make progress, the better off we'll be, the more open we'll be, the more tourism we'll have, the more people that will come and enjoy what Wyoming has to offer and go home saying, thank you, I'm glad I left my money there, I'm glad I helped support that state. It really is up to you. Thank you very, very much. And please enjoy the spring. It's a beautiful spring. Wyoming springs are like none other, and they're only kind of rivaled with fall. And by fall, we hope that everyone can go out and enjoy everything that they ever did. Thank you very much.